Okay, folks. As you can probably see from the background pictures, things are starting to shape up. I have some of my books there, and yeah, we're getting ready. Okay, so what I would like to do tonight, and possibly continue with for the foreseeable future, is to actually go into some texts, the text of the Zohar, in fact. But one particular text of the Zohar, which is called the Tikkunei Zohar. The Tikkunei Zohar is a section of the Zohar, also written by Rabbi Shimon by Yochai and his students. And what does the Tikkunei Zohar talk about? It talks really about the first word of the Torah, about the word Bereshit, the first word of the Bible, in the beginning. Now, just a little bit of background so that we're all on the same page before we actually even start. As far as I'm concerned, and as far as I think most Orthodox, certainly Hasidic Jews are concerned, and Kabbalists for sure, the Zohar is an authentic text that was not written by Rabbi Moshe de Leon in the 1300s. It was written by Rabbi Shimon by Yochai and his students and students, and they put it together just like the Talmud was put together over several generations. And if anyone wants to see some some articles on the subject, you can go to Kabbalah online.org. I'm going to type it in the chat, and then look for articles. You can either look under my name, or you can look under Authenticity of the Zohar. Authenticity of the Zohar. KabbalahOnline.org, or you can also get it at Chabad.org. Chabad.org. If you just go to the, you could look up my name or just look up Authenticity of the Zohar, and you will find articles. I don't want to deal with things that I already dealt with in writing. If you have any questions on that, you can either write them on the, you can write to me directly, or you can put in the questions to the website, and I will respond. I mean, these are articles from quite a long time ago, so there are other responses there and other questions and so on and so forth. In any event, the Zohar was written, no doubt in my mind, by Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai and by his disciples. The Zohar originally consisted of many more manuscripts than we have extant today. Many of them got lost or were stolen, confiscated. My belief is that there are many manuscripts of the Zohar in the library of the Vatican, but there's no way we can find out if that's true or not. In any event, that's my belief. The Zohar was a much larger work, of which we have some. There are one or two parshas missing that there's very little on in the Zohar. And there's also a section which is called, a section of the Zohar called the Tikkunei Zohar. It's actually a separate book of the Zohar. And Tikkunei Zohar, the title of the book itself, means the tikkuning could mean two things. The word tikkun, let me just type it into the chat box here. Tikkun, or if you prefer it in Hebrew, tikkun, right? Tikkun, so it would be in Hebrew, would be Tikkunei Zohar. Tikkunei Zohar. So the Tikkunei Zohar, the word tikkun can mean two things. It can mean to rectify, and it can also mean to decorate or to beautify. There are two, it's explained in various commentaries, including Hasidic teachings, that the word tikkunim, the word tikkun, is the Aramaic translation of the word malbush. Malbush meaning clothing. But there is somewhat of a difference between tikkunim and malbushim, clothing. Why? Because what do clothes do? After the sin of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, before that we didn't wear clothing, just like animals don't wear clothing. We didn't wear clothing before the sin of the tree of knowledge. But subsequently, after the tree of knowledge, we do wear clothing, and the purpose of the clothing is to hide to conceal our private areas, private parts, and so on and so forth, to conceal them. And one of the reasons for that is because it was the result of the desire for intimate relations that the whole chait, the whole sin of the tree of knowledge came about. It wasn't Adam's desire, but it was what's called the desire of the Nachash HaKadmoini, translated as a snake, but it's the principle of evil, the principle of self-indulgence, the principle of, or some call it Satan, or different kinds of names for it. But in any event, that is what we are talking about. So, clothing, therefore, is made to hide. If you go to Hollywood today, you wouldn't believe it, but most clothing is, at least to hide, to a certain extent, to conceal certain physical parts of the body. Okay. However, tikkun is also the translation of a tachshit meaning jewelry, which is made really not so much to conceal the body, but to beautify it. So therefore, when we talk about the Tikkunei Zohar, we're not talking about it as concealing the teachings, so much as beautifying the teachings. In other words, bringing out the beauty from the teachings in the Tikkunei Zohar. Now, are the teachings concealed? Of course. All teachings in Kabbalah, in Kabbalah right now, and all Kabbalistic teachings are clothed in certain analogies and explanations, sometimes explanations of verses or explanations of, or stories or events that took place. And we're supposed to derive from the events. We're supposed to derive from the stories. We're supposed to derive from the explanations. From the explanations of the verses. We're supposed to derive the lessons. So to a certain extent, yes, things are hidden. But the purpose is not to hide them, but to beautify them. In other words, to make them accessible to us. At the same time that the essence of the idea is to some extent concealed, at the same time, it is also revealed to those who have understanding. So the Tikkunei Zohar, on the one hand, is called Tikkunei Zohar because it is like a piece of jewelry. It's there to beautify the teachings inside it. Nevertheless, the teachings have to become accessible, and I hope that's what we'll be doing over the next period of time. I will be trying to make some of the teachings of the Tikkunei Zohar more accessible to our perhaps untrained vision or untrained minds, perhaps you could say. So we're going to be working on that. On the other hand, the word tikkun, as I mentioned before, also means to rectify. Because the whole purpose of creation is for it to be rectified in order to make it a place where godliness is revealed. Again, the purpose is revelation, but in order for there to be revelation, there has to be rectification. There has to be tikkun. So the word Tikkunei Zohar could be therefore translated as the rectification of the shining light. And again, rectification doesn't mean that there's something wrong with the light. It means that there's something wrong with the world that doesn't allow the light to shine. Because the word for world in Hebrew is he'elem. I could write that in Hebrew over here, he'elem. He'elem, or in English, you would write it as follows. He'elem. Yeah, he'elem. He'elem means concealment. The world, in being created, concealed godliness. The purpose of the world is to reveal godliness, but it has to be revealed through our actions and through our consciousness and through our awareness of God in everything. Of course, there's awareness of His transcendence as well. So all of that, in the creation of the world, was created in such a way that it's hidden and we have to uncover it. That's called the Tikkun of the light. The rectification of the light. The rectification of the light is revealing the light that's naturally there within creation. And this is done particularly in this work of the Zohar, in this book of the Zohar, the Tikkunei Zohar. Because what does the Tikkunei Zohar do? It explains the first word of the Torah in the beginning. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Bereshit bara Elokim et hashamayim v'et haaretz. The word Bereshit, in the beginning, or as the Zohar itself says, with the beginning, not in the beginning, but with the beginning. And we'll explain it later on. That word Bereshit, the Tikkunei Zohar explains in 70 different ways. There's 70 tikkunim, or 70 chapters, if you like, in the Tikkunei Zohar. What are these 70 chapters? These 70 chapters are different permutations of the word Bereshit. I'll give you, for example, just so that you can get some idea of what I'm talking about. Let me write it again in Hebrew. Bereshit. The word Bereshit. And for example, the Zohar translates the word Bereshit. One of the explanations is bara shis, which means what? He created the 6 sides of space. The 6 sides of space, in the spiritual sense, are the 6 sfirot of the world of Zeir Anpin. Zeir Anpin defines space. Malchut defines time. The Sfirah of Malchut defines time. Hashem Melech, Hashem Malach, Hashem Yimloch. God ruled, He rules currently, and He will rule, right? Past, present, and future. That's the idea of Malchut. Whereas the idea of Zeir Anpin, which is the cluster of Sfirot from Chesed, Gvura, Tiferet, Netzach, Hod, Yesod, those 6 Sfirot. Should I pull up a Sfirah chart? Is it necessary? Here we go. Let me pull up a chart of the Sfirot. Okay. All right. Let me share screen and we will get there. One second. Okay. Here we go. So, this here, these 6 sfirot, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, these 6 sfirot define space. These are called the 6 sides of space. Right and left, front and back, up and down. And Malchut defines time. So when we say, or when the Zohar says that the word Bereshis is Barashis, it means He created the 6 sides of space. He created space. He created dimension. And then the Zohar goes on to explain what that means. We then continue, and the Zohar then talks about Brit, Eish, same letters, Brit Eish. It's all the same letters as the word Bereshit, Brit Eish. Right? The covenant of fire. And it goes on to explain what that is. And what the purpose of it is and so on. And in any event, the Zohar goes through 70 different permutations of this particular word. And there's another one. If Rashbi is another one. Rashbi. Rashbi means the head of the household. And what that's all about and which Sphira we're talking about. In any event, you can, I guess you could see, you could get an understanding of what of what the Tikkunei Zohar is all about and what it intends to teach us. Okay. Having said that, we will probably start off not with the first Tikkun itself, but we will start off with the introduction to the Tikkunei Zohar, one section of which is probably very familiar with everybody. It's called Patach Eliyahu. One of the introductions, one of the sections of the introduction to the Zohar is called Patach Eliyahu. Patach Eliyahu. And you can find Patach Eliyahu, I'm sure you can find it online. You can go to KabbalahOnline.org or to Chabad.org, and you can find Patach Eliyahu translated into English and possibly with some explanation. And it's an introduction, an overall introduction to many of the concepts that we find later expanded on and expounded in the Zohar itself. So it's like sort of an introduction. But the story starts off, actually, with the whole story of Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai. This is a story that is told in the Talmud as well. It's not just told in the Zohar, but the Zohar has some details that the Talmud does not have. It says that the Tikkunei Zohar starts off with the introduction, starts off as follows, and it says Rabbi Shimon fled to a cave which was in a place called Midbar Lod. It's in the desert area. This is not the cave where Rabbi Shimon is buried, which is up in the north of Israel. This is in the south. Right, Midbar Lod. Lod is an area between really Jerusalem and Tel Aviv. There's a city called Lod, and at one time it was a desert area. It's called Midbar Yehuda. Actually, the desert sort of towards the south of Israel, towards the south, between Jerusalem and Tel Aviv. And so he fled to that area. Why did he flee to that area? So the Zohar doesn't tell the story, but the Talmud does tell the story of how he fled to this cave. What happened was that there was some of the sages were having a discussion. They were chatting, and one of the sages said, the Romans are not so bad after all. This was the time of the Roman occupation of Israel. The Romans are not so bad after all. They built us roads, and they built bathhouses and various other things and so on. And Rabbi Shimon sharply rebuked that particular opinion, the bearer of that opinion. And he said what they built only for themselves, only to glorify themselves and to collect taxes, tolls on the roads, and to bring promiscuity into the land. Because these bathhouses were places where there was apparently some promiscuity, and in fact, some of the bathhouses actually had statues in them. One of the statues was Aphrodite, who was the goddess in Roman belief, or Roman Greek belief, the goddess of fertility or promiscuity or whatever you want to call it. So Rabbi Shimon sharply rebuked this person. And one of the people who was standing around was a person named Yehuda ben Gerim, who apparently wasn't the brightest bulb in the box. And he went and told everybody what Rabbi Shimon had said. I assume that he told people with admiration what Rabbi Shimon had said. I'm not sure about this. It doesn't really say, but he should have kept his mouth shut, because there was plenty of the latter day. In those days, they had the KGB as well. It wasn't called the KGB, but it was called whatever the Roman spy network was called. But they were spying, and they were finding out who supports the Roman Empire, because they were always afraid, of course, of rebellion. And because of the Bar Kokhba revolt, they had what to be afraid of. The Kokhba revolt had happened sometime before this, and had led to the fall of Masada and various other tragedies. In any event, so this Yehuda ben Gerim spread the rumor around, or he spread the words of Rabbi Shimon around, and the Romans came looking for him. Rabbi Shimon got wind that they were coming to look for him, and he ran away. First he fled to the Beis Medrash, to the study hall. And when he figured out that they would sooner or later come and find him there, he fled with his son, Rabbi Eliezer. He fled to a cave in Midbar Lod, in the desert of Lod. And he hid away there for quite a long period of time. And no one of his family knew he was there, because had he, they would possibly have tortured his wife to find out details, but he didn't tell them where he was. But they were sustained by a stream that's miraculously, even though it was a desert area, a stream miraculously started coming out of the rocks, a stream of water, and a carob tree. And that's what they ate and drank, and that's how they lived for 12 years. Until they came out, and then they had to go back in for another year. Well, we'll talk about that later, perhaps. In any event, they were there for a long time, until the emperor died. And then they came out and everything was okay. Once the emperor died, they were forgiven of the charges that were pending against them, or charges that had been pronounced against them. Okay. And while they were there, Eliyahu Hanavi, Elijah the prophet, even though Elijah the prophet had been ascended to heaven many generations before, nevertheless, he is the bearer, or one of the bearers, of the secrets of the Torah. And he comes back as an angel in order to teach those who are worthy. So he would come every day, and not just once a day, but twice a day, to teach Rabbi Shimon and his son, Rabbi Eliezer, the secrets of the Torah, which are in fact the secrets of the Zohar. So the Tikkunei Zohar then is one of the areas of secrets that they were taught, and Rabbi Shimon later on wrote down and explained. And explains 70 facets of the word Bereshit, 70 different permutations of this word. The Zohar itself is called Zohar, which, as I said before, means light. It's one of the 7 words for light in the Torah. There's Or, there's Zohar, there's Noga, and various other ones. But it's from a verse, actually. And the verse says, Hamaskilim yazhiru kazohar harakia. Those who have consciousness, maskilim is sometimes translated as those who have intelligence. It's more than just intelligence, it's consciousness, God consciousness, maskilim. Those who have God consciousness, yazhiru, will shine like the heavens, like the shining of the heavens. So this concept of shining, or Zohar, is what the book that or the work that he wrote was called the Zohar, because of this introductory phrase. It was the first teaching of Rabbi Shimon is on the verse, those, the intelligent or the conscious, the ones who have God consciousness, will shine like the shining of the heavens. And who are these people who have God consciousness? That's Rabbi Shimon and his disciples. And in fact, not only his disciples, but his disciples' disciples, and so on, right throughout time. People who study the teachings that were revealed to Rabbi Shimon by Elijah, by Eliyahu, those are called maskilim. When they reach a certain level of competence, they're called maskilim. So let me write this word. Wendy asked me to write the word maskilim. You can see it there, maskilim, in Hebrew. Maskilim. Maskilim. Now, you probably remember the word maskilim from the late 1700s, early 1800s and onwards. The maskilim were secularists, Jewish secularists, who called themselves also maskilim because they were very learned in the universities and so on and so forth. But they certainly didn't have any God consciousness. They were the opposite of God consciousness. They were secular consciousness. So, maskilim, again, means, it's from the word seichel. Seichel simply means intellect. But that doesn't just mean intellectuals. The modern terminology means intellectuals, yes. But in the time of Rabbi Shimon, it's not intellectuals. When did you ever see the face of an intellectual shining with godliness? You didn't, or at least I never did. I mean, I did go to university, but I never saw any of my professors whose faces shined with God consciousness, with awareness of godliness. So, maskilim has a different meaning in the context of the Zohar, and it means those people who become aware of, become conscious of divine matters. Those are called the maskilim, and they will shine like the heavens. Okay. The beginning of the introduction also goes on to say that permission was given for Rabbi Shimon to publicize these ideas, which until that time had remained hidden and were known only by very, very few. And he was given permission to publicize these things. Not only did he publicize these matters to his students, but he also publicized them to the souls that were already in the Garden of Eden and in higher worlds, and they too would come to listen to these teachings, because these were teachings that had never before been revealed. Rabbi Shimon got them from an extremely high level, higher than the level of these other souls in the Garden of Eden and so on, and even Malachim, angels, came to hear these teachings. Okay. All right. He then goes on to say that he was also given permission to reveal certain holy names and to teach about the 10 sfirot, the 10 emanations which we spoke about before, the 10 sfirot, and that is this tree of sfirot over here, which I showed you before. It's called the tree of the sfirot, or the tree of life, as opposed to the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Let me just make it a bit smaller so you can see the whole thing on one page. Still not. Okay. There we go. Still not. There you go. Okay? Keter, the highest of the Sfirot, Chochma, Bina, Da'at. If we count Keter, we don't count Da'at. We count Da'at, we don't count Keter. So there's not 11 Sfirot, there's only 10. Depends on if we're talking about from above to below, in which case we count Keter. If we're talking about below to above, then we count Da'at. In other words, if we're talking about the divine outpouring of energy, then we count Keter. If we're talking about man's increasing consciousness from below to above, then we talk about Da'at. Then Da'at is important. So again, Keter, Chochma, Bina, Da'at, Chesed, Gvura, Tiferet, Netzach, Hod, Yesod, Malchut. These teachings came to be revealed in the Zohar by Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, even though there were other Kabbalists at the time who also knew these teachings. Nevertheless, they hadn't been revealed clearly. There were a number of other works that existed at that time. For example, the Sefer Yetzirah, and also the Sefer HaBahir, and so on, which does mention the Sfirot, but just very, very much in passing. It doesn't go into them. But the Tikkunei Zohar and the Zohar itself explain these things in great depth, and we will get to that in the future. Okay. Let me stop here and ask if there are any questions. No questions. Yes, Terry has a question. Okay, go ahead. All right, one more thing that we'll learn about today. Doesn't seem there's any questions. One more thing we will learn about today is that just as the shining of the heavens includes all different types of colors, in other words, there's many different shades of light, and there's many different colors which make up the light. As we know, if you beam a light through a prism, then it breaks up these constituent colors. So the Zohar talks about all kinds of different colors of the light and what they mean, right? Red, for example, is the color that is associated with Gevura. Green is associated with Tiferet. It's more like a yellow-green. White is associated with Chochmah or with Chesed, and so on and so forth. So it goes through the various colors and explains them as well. And there's an entire chapter in a work called the Paradise Rimonim. The Paradise is a much later work written by Rabbi Moshe Cordovero. Rabbi Moshe Cordovero lived in about the 1500s, the early 1500s. And he wrote a book called The Paradise, where he collates and gathers together all the information in the Zohar, and he writes it as a sort of an encyclopedia. Very, very well organized, very, very well explained, very, very crystal clear. So the Ramak, Rabbi Moshe Cordovero, has a whole chapter in The Paradise, which is called Shar HaGavanim, the chapter on colors, and he goes into all the correspondences of the colors to the various sfirot. We probably won't get into that now. I'm going to address a question from Terry. Is there any significance with a hexagon with a circle representing resonance and six-sided space? I assume that that a hexagon, yes, represents six-sided space, and that probably would be representative of Zeir Anpin, but it's only representative in a spatial sense. Obviously, Zeir Anpin itself is not space. It just defines space. It limits space. The chemical base of a life is a hexagon. That's interesting. I'm not sure about the resonance idea, the circle and the resonance. The resonance is really a different, in Kabbalah anyway, it's somewhat of a different Resonance is the idea of pulsating of the life force. Generally, that's called the resonance. But it could be that they may be related. I could look more into that and see if I can find anyone that says that. Okay, I think that's enough for tonight, folks. We will hopefully have a class next week again. And unless there are more questions.